The fall of Marvel needs to be studied. Going from the most profitable studio in the world, dominating the box office, pumping out billion-dollar hits multiple times a year, to being lucky that anybody gives a shit that they released multiple movies and shows per year. This is the same studio that was once so consistent, so dominant, that even their lesser-known characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy were turning in massive box office numbers. And now, they release entire movies, shows, crossovers, and it seems that the pop cultural discussion ends at a loose memory that Marvel even existed to begin with. Even I didn't want to admit it. For a long time, I defended it. I wanted to believe that things hadn't changed. But now, we have to ask ourselves sort of a tough question. Was this inevitable? It didn't all happen at once. Even post-Endgame, people were still tuning in out of habit. No Way Home was huge. WandaVision sparked weekly conversation. Loki was setting up something big, but behind the scenes, things were already unraveling. Suddenly, the MCU wasn't releasing 2 movies per year. It was churning out 6 shows and 3 movies per year. And they were all shit. They lacked something the previous phases had. They lacked the secret sauce. Beyond that, Marvel wasn't building up to anything. It was just releasing stuff. Eventually, audiences finally started realizing that watching everything was both necessary and unnecessary at the same time. Something like Falcon and the Winter Soldier was an exploration of the ground level of the Marvel Universe, exploring it from the perspective of 2 fan-favorite characters in a world where everything has changed because of the events of Endgame, while also being the next big outing for the new Captain America, where they arbitrarily made him give up the shield so they can set his character back, also they can make a show end where Endgame ended, by making Sam Captain America. This show unintentionally became the origin story of a superhero suit, not an exploration of any characters and their deeper lives, not something that justified its own existence, but filler content at the expense of 2 characters that personally I was a huge fan of for years. In a sense, it was self-invalidating, a secondary tier of worth. Here's the crazy thing though, the MCU was never actually about plot. Now, I know that sounds like an insane claim coming from me of all people, but hear me out. It's not a controversial thing for me to say that people like the MCU for its characters, right? People gravitate towards this brand because of the cool characters, oftentimes doing fun crossovers. And while plot objectively drives character and characters drive plot, both working together to tell a story, it's not much of a stretch to say that people tune into the MCU because of the character work. Let's be 100% serious for a second. Story-wise, the MCU was never actually great. Remember when Thanos was portrayed as thin on resources for years, requiring middlemen to do his bidding, until all of a sudden he had a warship and multiple armies at his disposal? Or how he somehow trusted Loki with an Infinity Stone to find another Infinity Stone? Or when Tony gave his address to a terrorist and didn't let Pepper go somewhere safer? Remember when Thor and Loki exited the Bifrost at 2 entirely different points while flying faster than the speed of light and somehow arrived on the same planet? James Gunn recently revealed that he didn't even know what the Infinity Stones were, saying that the plans were pretty much made on the fly.
I knew there were Infinity Stones when they said, we've been thinking, and we think that maybe some of these things have been Infinity Stones in different ways. And so could you write up what the Infinity Stones mean? When I wrote the scene with the Collector, explaining that, there was this explosion and then the Infinity Stones were born and what they mean and where they came from, that was literally me just sitting down for 3 minutes and writing that, and that's then what became the rest of the Infinity Stones.
I bring all of these things up to say that if you revisit most MCU movies, the actual plot side of things doesn't hold up the majority of the time. That isn't to say that all of these movies are automatically shit, but it means that they aren't nearly as rock solid as people treat them as. And it just goes to show how much onus people put onto the characters above all else. From my observations, it seems that most people can pretty much ignore when a plot makes 0 sense, as long as the characters are well written. Most people can stomach when a movie is a loose collection of scenes randomly thrown together with very little rhyme or reason, as long as there's good characters populating them. I think Avengers Endgame might be the best example of this, and before I say anything else, I need to remind you guys that just because I talk shit about a movie does not necessarily mean I hate it. I adore Endgame. I still get emotional during the ending. I had a blast watching it for the first time, and I still have fun watching it today. That being said, this plot is a fucking mess, holy shit. It's only able to happen because a rat somehow tapped into greater cosmic intelligence and flicked the right switch to bring Scott back from the quantum realm. I know Strange looked at 14,605 possible futures and saw one where they defeated Thanos, but this is insane. The odds of the specific rat doing the specific thing at the specific time are actually far less likely than 14 million to 1, given the time frame and specificity of what happened. But beyond that, the time heist is insanely broken, with plot holes out the wazoo and characters making stupid moves for no reason. And you know what? It's one of the highest grossing films ever made because all that people really cared about was watching a send-off for characters they liked. So yeah, the MCU was never actually all that good, but there are a few gems scattered in the garbage. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange, The Avengers, Iron Man, all movies with tight narratives, characters, consistent thematic through lines, something that should be ignored, don't get me wrong. Marvel was clearly capable of telling genuine great superhero stories. They just didn't do it consistently. What was pretty consistent, however, was their character writing. They had this secret sauce that I described earlier. They knew how to set up character. There's no one way to describe how to create the characters they did. That's honestly an entirely different video concept I may or may not make a video on someday. Subscribe. Ha! But they always understood that the characters needed an actual personal stake in the story, as with the characters around them. Oftentimes, they create villains that were either directly linked to the hero and challenge them on an ideological level, testing how far they've come with their growth, or they'd be cautionary tales of what the hero could become if they indulge in their darkest traits. Having a film about a group of people setting aside their differences and becoming a family, have the villain be a literal cosmic racist. Does the character learn magical abilities to heal himself? Have the villain be that, but he became drunk with the power it granted to the point of wanting to violate the laws of nature to fix something out of his control. That kind of stuff. But when your entire new slate of movies is based on characters facing off against... do you guys remember that meme making fun of Marvel for their villains being the same as the heroes, but evil? Yeah, take that concept and do it unironically and remove all logic behind it. Wanda, but evil, but also fundamentally a different person entirely and someone who doesn't actually challenge her on any fundamental character level, strictly an emotional level. A Green Goblin who doesn't actually have a connection to this universe's Peter Parker, one whose entire character is predicated on the audience having meta-knowledge of the other movies he's in, as with all of the villains in No Way Home. Yeah, hot take, No Way Home is terrible. I still love it. Wanda as the villain of a Doctor Strange movie is... I'm not actually gonna touch that with a 100-foot pole. Jesus fucking Christ. The drama has been thoroughly diluted into melodrama. Characters' ideologies are just not being challenged, yet they act like the stakes are higher. And that's another annoying thing about the continuation of the MCU. They keep trying to top themselves, but how the fuck do you top the entire universe being at stake?
That's the neat thing. You don't.
There is literally nothing that can possibly top everything being at stake. By definition of the word, that is the highest it could go. Of course, Marvel has conveniently jumped headfirst into a 3-foot deep pool of multiversal storytelling, which has been used nearly exclusively to pull Dave Filoni-level cheap cameos to make sweaty nerds clap like trained seals, instead of engaging with the storytelling on any deeper level.
You say the fate of the multiverse, and my brain dies.
I joke, but it's honestly how it registers at this point. Before, the MCU had a pretty simple escalation of stakes. Humanity could be enslaved by aliens, all life on Earth could be destroyed, half of all life in the universe could be destroyed, the universe itself could be destroyed. But now it's always locked on the same level, to a point where even a fucking Deadpool movie covered the same ground as even the fucking Avengers movie that's coming out next year. Obviously, when the stakes are almost always on the same level, people are going to start to check out. Now, of course, that isn't to say that there aren't movies with different stakes, but the aforementioned character work is so lacking that there really isn't much to get lost in. I also think it's interesting how the state of Marvel fans has also impacted Marvel itself. Notice how there are only 3 movies after Endgame that grossed over $900 million at the box office. No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, and Deadpool and Wolverine. What do all of these movies have in common? Cameos. The hype they carried was through showing off nostalgic characters and actors for the sake of it. We gotta have as many X-Men and Spider-Man characters from past movies that Marvel didn't make so the audiences can care. As if the entire MCU wasn't built in spite of the limitations they had with access to certain characters. Does nobody else see the absurdity of milking nostalgia for other people's work? And nothing is more telling than how fans are responding to the release of big saga-ending movies. The hype behind Infinity War was all because they had built up this massive story arc, and people wanted to see how it all played out. The hype behind Endgame was seeing the horrors of our favorite heroes losing, many of which having gut-wrenching deaths, and wanting to see how the Avengers could recover from that. The hype behind Doomsday is entirely the big cast and cameos. Barely anyone is hyped to see what the story is, even less so than before. The only reason anybody gives a fuck is because they want to see all those cameos. Plot twist, nerds, having standards is a good thing. If we stop rewarding this pandering bullshit with our money, they'll be forced to stop making them. Do you want an original story? Support original stories. Sinners has been my recent hyperfixation. Go check it out, it's immaculate. What I hope is that Marvel fans can get over themselves and see past the smoke and mirrors game of digging up some ancient relic of nostalgic time long forgotten and see that it's a marketing trick. If you're going to a movie entirely because of some cameos, you already fucked up a long time ago. That being said, I think we have something that could work. By the time this video releases, Fantastic Four should be around the corner. I have no idea if it's good or not, but the trailers really gave me hope. But it looks like the exact opposite of everything they've been doing. Solid characters interacting with each other in meaningful ways? Well, it looks like it. What looks to be an actual plot with stakes that aren't the same as every other movie? Yup. What also helps is that it's set in its own world, so it's able to get away with so much more that wouldn't be narratively appropriate in the MCU proper. Even playing around with audience expectations, given that this is an entirely new world that, for all we know, could be destroyed and never come back. Frankly, I'd love to see them retire the old MCU and set all of their new movies in a new universe, completely divorced from the cinematic dumpster fire they haven't yet extinguished. But I know they won't. So I guess all I can really hope for if I want to see the MCU return to its glory days is for it to completely reboot. The time will come eventually, nothing stays profitable forever. Until then, I'll check out Fantastic Four, not watch whatever the fuck this is, and remember the MCU for what it was at its peak. A flawed but fun time. Anyways, that's it for this video. Remember to like and subscribe, yell at me in the comments about how much of a big meaniehead I am, become a channel member to fund my cocaine addiction, and if there's a mysterious being lying in your bed with you tonight, I can assure you that's Dorcas. He threw up and needed someone to comfort him. If it's not him, pray to whatever god you worship. Goodbye!